you enjoy in particular about your studies?
Well, of course, for the young students out there from applying from college to university, I'm sure this will help a lot of you. When it was my time to apply to university, I was very unsure of what I wanted to do. I ended up applying to like 5 different courses, including biomedical sciences, optometry, chemistry, and pharmacy wasn't even in my mind at the time. And then when it came to actually looking at the type of subjects I wanted to do, and I spoke to a few people as well who helped me make the decision I made. I read into what my course at the moment entails, and I don't know, I just sort of felt like I wanted to do it. So I just ended up applying to it at DMU. And alhamdulillah, I got in, and my first year wasn't very great for me. But then I actually ended up learning to love the course as the years progressed. And now I don't think I could see myself doing anything else.
So going back to your first year where you said that it wasn't that great, is that more to do with the fact that our first year at uni was cut out by the coronavirus, or is there, the fact that the course itself was content heavy or stuff like that?
So of course they say the jump between college and university is great, and I think I underestimated that greatly. Thinking when I was in college, I was on track with everything, and then when it came to uni, you were given a lot of independent time. It wasn't very much scheduled, so it was a lot of like your own responsibility to look after your own studying. I didn't quite grasp that, and that's why I think I struggled a little bit. And then of course coronavirus hit, and I think that helped when it came to disciplining me, when they kind of removed face-to-face lectures, and the responsibility felt like, okay, now I need to teach myself now if I want to progress on, and that's what I did.
So how did you find the motivation to actually sit down and say, okay, I'm at home, there's a virus, we can't go in for uni? How do you find the motivation to actually study?
That's a good question. I think it boiled down to the point that I had no choice.
For majority of us,
yeah, it was a do or die kind of situation. It was like, if I don't sit down and put the work in, I'm not gonna, get what I want out of it. I'm not gonna progress on to the next year. I need to really, really, firstly make my parents proud, make myself proud, because I chose this, path.
Of course, yeah.
And I went Jamaat in 2018. That was when I started. 2019 actually, when I started uni. So this was just before COVID hit, when we were allowed to go. And I went to Derby, and I sat there we were there for like 5 days. And when I came back, it was just like, okay, yeah, I've had a break. I've set my kind of plans in motion. When I was there, I was making lots of dua, like, I need to find the motivation to start learning, start revising, start getting into, and I came up with this mindset that when I started, I wanted to do this course to serve the people. Like, we were talking, of course, in Jama'ah about like doing things for the sake of Allah. And when it came to the power of medicine, because there was a doctor who came with us, and I didn't even know he was a doctor at the time. I only found out on the last day. And so I asked him that, why did you do medicine? It's like 7 years, 8 years. It's very difficult, of course, and lifestyle. And he said that, I just, I figured it's the best way to help people for the sake of Allah. Like, how much barakah can you get from that?
That's true.
So when I kind of like took inspiration from that, and I was like, okay, yeah, I need to develop this mindset. And the more I developed that mindset, the easier it became for me to sort of progress, to work hard at things, to do things, because I know that my goal is to help the community for the sake of Allah. That's it, very much.
So going off that point you just made, how do you think pharmacy can help Muslims in our community?
Yeah.
And how do we optimize the amount of attention we give to pharmaceutical products, especially in our communities where it's more people prefer the older methods of medicine, etc. They don't really follow the modern methods of medicine.
Yeah. Well, if you're speaking about the majority of our community, I mean, they are on pretty much all similar medication when it comes to, you know, our kind of ethnic group having associations with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes. One of the main big three, you know, and you don't, you read and you know, you have these ideations about home remedies being good for this and this, but at the end of the day, when they're seen by their doctor, they're going to be given this, the pharmacological medications, the actual medications, rather than homeopathic medications. And when you're talking about how it's affecting our society, what was your question again? Sorry.
The question was how can pharmacy help Muslims in our community?
So how can it help Muslims in our community? Well, if we for example think about the kind of exposure that we have as Muslims and the kind of stereotypes that are out there as well when it comes to working in pharmacies. I'll give you an example. So one of my colleagues from Boots, he was working previously in Bournemouth. Now Bournemouth isn't a very Muslim dense population. It's less. It's actually minimal. And he was the only, I'll say, Asian person. He's Indian, so he was the only Indian person working in that block, like in that town square.
Yeah.
He was the only. So he experienced like a lot of, you know, racism at that time in that place, and this was only like 5-6 years ago. It wasn't very long ago, and that's just it's simply down to a lack of education, a lack of exposure, and a lack of, you know, just having people used to having people in our community being used to having, say, other, I'll say, how do you put it? You know, other people.
Yeah, like
ethnic minorities, for example.
Yeah. So they'd have the more traditional methods of medication,
exactly,
etc., as opposed to using.
Yeah. So when it comes to our Muslim community being involved in pharmacy and you know, the growing pharmacy, there's a lot more exposure, especially in Leicester. It's alhamdulillah, it's quite good in Leicester. You know, we don't have many problems that I'm aware of. I've never experienced anything in my personal experience at Boots. I've never experienced anything that's negative. I've only seen the positives, and even Boots as well. Like, they greatly encourage diversity, and they provide a lot of facilities for a lot of people, especially for if we need to pray at work. They provide that for us at work, and you know, it's that kind of exposure that helps the understanding, because if you don't mention it, then they're not gonna know.
Yeah, and I think what you find in a lot of those places that people are willing to learn and willing to understand as well.
Of course they are. 100%. If you show them that, you know, your genuine your genuine concern is this, then they're obligated to, you know, try and provide a safer or a better environment for you as an employee. Definitely.
So you mentioned working at Boots Pharmacy. How long have you been working there for?
Oh, I've been there for since 1 year, 9 months now, going.
So dating back around 2021.
2020
ish, yeah.
2021, yeah. 100%,
yeah. So how have you managed to balance the uni and work life? Because it's not. I know people that are also studying and working at the same time, and it's not an easy thing. So how have you managed to do it as a pharmacy student as well, where the content you've got to be learning is so rich, and then also going away and working for a job, and then coming back home, and then you've got leisure time and stuff like that. So how do you manage all that time?
Well, at first it was very difficult. I mean, I wasn't working from first year and second year. And then when it came to finishing second year, I thought, actually, now I need to get some experience in. So I joined Boots Online Prescription Service, which is in town in Gallantry Gate. So I guess balancing it was difficult in the first few months because it was just that exhaustion after the week, and then you have to wake up at 7. You know, you have to get up and go to work on one day a week, and I feel so bad complaining for just one day a week, because I know people who, obviously everyone works every day.
Yeah.
But when it comes to juggling education alongside that, it's like you have to realize first that education is a full-time thing. And then whatever's on the side of that is your part-time investment kind of thing, yeah. So I kind of made a structure that I made weekdays only for university. Do not mix that with work. And then just that one Saturday, just work, no university. So that my mind wouldn't confuse the two. And it was independent from each other. That made it kind of easier, investing my time and energy into the different, different things.
So would you say it's been a positive experience for you?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I encourage everybody who's doing pharmacy to get a part-time job in a pharmacy, or experience-wise, because you will learn so much more in that than you will at uni. I'm not gonna lie. The real-life experience, the actual people you meet, the connections you make, which is very important. Networking, 100% important. To pick the brains of your tutors, of your pharmacists, of your people who you work with, because you may be a pharmacy student, but they've been through it, and even the colleagues around you, the dispensers, everyone, they have so much knowledge that we wouldn't even think we'd think about, which I kind of grasped. I grasped that quite quickly. I read the room and I was like, yeah, I need to pick the brains of the X, Y, and Z, and try and better myself in this terms of this to help myself in my education. One thing that helps though, because we work with some of my fellow students that I'm in the same year with, so we kind of bounce off each other at work when it comes to studying. If we come across a topic or anything like that we don't understand, it's a free for all. So you just mention, okay, no, I don't know something about this. They'll say, okay, what don't you know about it? Then we do a little pop quiz while we're working. So there's no distraction, anything like that. But it's a constant teaching and learning through working.
That's a good way of doing it. Yeah, so learning on the job, pretty much.
Exactly. Learning on the job.
Being educated on
with
the
your
job.
peers and everything like that. But I have the courtesy of having that because it's that one specific place I work at. Yeah. It's mostly students who are working there on the weekend, which are in my year, and the year below. So we're quite familiar with each other, yeah.
Yeah, so it must be nice to develop your skills as a pharmacist at the same time as people your age. Yeah. And you can sort of, somebody needs help there, or they might help you in a certain way as well.
Yeah, 100%.
So would you say that working at Boots has assisted your studies? So in terms of learning content, has it made it easier? Like how much easier has it made it?
Yeah, of course. I've had tutors who've, not necessarily tutors, but, the people I work with who kind of mentor you while you're working. So they just, set you tasks like, oh, find something about this, or oh, what do you know about this, or what's this condition? They test your brain to see what you're doing. And I had a lot of that when I joined. We had a lot of good pharmacists there, and it has helped a lot. It has helped, and the majority of what I remember is what I remember from working at work at Boots when I was at work. The people who taught me, and that's what I remember most, rather than being at uni listening to a lecture. But it's more of that one-to-one kind of what is this, teaching and learning kind of thing. And a lot of the time it was more of a blackmail as well. He'd be like, one of my pharmacists, he'd be like, okay, if you don't know this by the end of by the end of today, or if you don't listen in the next half an hour, we said we were gonna go bowling, and you're not gonna go.
It's a good motivation.
Good motivation. Like, he'll just come up with something, and we'll just because we were pally like that, you know what I mean? So it was one of them. It was just
That's good, alhamdulillah, yeah.
It was good though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. So it was a bit of a motivational factor there.
So, what are your plans for after uni? So if pharmacy is what you're studying now,
Yeah.
right, and you're currently working at Boots Pharmacy,
Yeah.
so do you plan to continue at Boots Pharmacy after finishing studying, or do you plan to move somewhere else, or what's the end goal here for you?
I can't be spilling my secrets.
This is what the show's for. You got to inform the people.
So for the benefit of the people, for the benefit of the students who are listening, and for parents who are thinking about, you know, what their students are going to be doing, or that their kids are going to be going into from college to university, etc., and what it can take you. The misconception of being pharmacists is that a lot of people think that pharmacists just work in a shop. This is not the case.
Yeah,
100%. There's so many avenues. I only just figured out this year, and that was through connections, through, you know, making contacts with people who were pharmacists and who were at the place they are now.
Mm-hmm.
One of my old colleagues I used to work with, he was a pharmacist, so he's 29 now. He's working to be an advanced clinical practitioner, and that's completely...
Just so people who don't know what that is know, can you explain what that is?
So you have...
By that I mean me.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I'm sorry. So of course you have a doctor's degree, you have a physician's associate degree, you know, you have all these degrees, and there's one called an advanced clinical practitioner, which is basically you're becoming a doctor, but in a specialized area.
Okay.
You get me?
Yeah.
Like blood work.
Okay.
Diabetes, anything like that. So it's, and that he only got that because he went in through pharmacy. He got all that knowledge. He went on and doing now it's called independent prescribing, which is now pharmacists have the sort of power now to take this course after they graduate, or after however long they feel that they're comfortable, you know, that to do this, and they can take this course called independent prescribers course, and you're essentially now have the license to prescribe medication for your seen patients, which means working at a clinic, at GP surgery. You know, they don't. You know, when you go to the surgery, they say, "Oh, you can see your doctor, and then you can see your pharmacist." And why would you want to see your pharmacist at the hospital? Because they actually sort out your medication, which is very important. So it's sort of like the behind the scenes of the whole operation, and the pharmacists have that sort of role when it comes to being the backbone of everything. Same goes with nurses, same goes with doctors, same goes with all of that. They all work together. None is better than the other. Everyone has their own specialties. I'm friends with some medical students, and I'm asking them a question that that's something that we've learned from our course. Oh, what's this? And they're thinking, I don't know. So I'm thinking, okay, you're doing medicine. I would expect you to know this, but it surprises me that you don't know it. Why not? We don't learn that. It comes down to that. They don't learn it. So they learn what they're taught, and that's specific to the course that they're doing.
So would you find commonalities in the things you learn, let's say in pharmacy, medicine, and then you find a lot of differences in the way that those subjects are taught as well?
Sometimes. When it comes to like conditions, you know, sort of diseases, conditions, you know, health conditions, the broad topics like that. But when it comes down to the medicines, that's where we kind of specialize in. They don't pay too much attention to that. It's more of just the actual diagnostics and the actual biology of everything that they learn. And we learn that on a broader spectrum, not on to the core. Yeah. We learn that in a more broad sense, where we learn to diagnose, but we refer rather than diagnose, unless of course you use that and then you go into hospital again. So there's community pharmacy, there's hospital pharmacy, there's GP clinical pharmacy, there's
so there's a lot of avenues for people who study pharmacy. So if they were left uni, they'd have quite a few routes to go down.
100%. If they make the right connections and they use, I'd say, they have to kind of find it, to start to look for it. It's not just gonna come and land on your lap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So alhamdulillah, fortunately, I've secured my placement for next year, and that was through a third party that we all go through as a national course. And I'm pleased with it, alhamdulillah. Like, I couldn't be happier.
Can we ask where you'll be doing your placement? Or
I'd like to keep that to myself.
Okay, that's fine.
But alhamdulillah, it's one of those things, you pray for it, you work for it. Allah gives you the sort of, if you ask Allah for it, He will give it to you. If you show that you're gonna do something that's great with it, your intentions are set right, because that's what it's about. A lot of people have, they think that they have the right intention, and then when they get something, then it just completely turns the opposite, and it's like, then it gets taken away from them, and then thinking, why has it been taken away from me? Because your intention has been, compromised. So it's really important, to have the right intention when you're doing things, especially in terms of healthcare. You're handling people's lives, and having their best interests in mind, and especially as a Muslim as well, your mindset should be, I'm doing this because Allah's given me the will to do this. He's opened this door for me. Let me sort of carry this action out in His name, so that firstly there's barakah in it. Secondly, we're helping His creation. Even if they're not Muslim, it doesn't matter. Like, they're still the creation of Allah. So you're still providing a service for them, and you're kind of you're essentially a servant to the people as well, but with a respect, of course.
Inshallah, Allah make it easy for you for your placement and the rest of your course.
Inshallah.
So what I wanted to know was what growing up, because we went to the same secondary school,
course,
Crown Hills Community College. We were there for.
Those are the days.
They were the days. They really were.
The days.
For 5 years we were there. Then the 2 years college, we were at different colleges. Then we met again at uni.
Yeah.
So throughout your secondary education, was the plan always to study in a medical field, or did you have another idea? Because at that age, everyone has a dream.
What can you tell me, Rukanah, from when we were at school? What was my favorite subject?
Science,
maths.
Science and maths, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And I remember you used to sit in our classroom, and we used to, have our differences.
Yeah.
But, and yeah, like,
it's not easy living up to a math genius when he's just next to you. All the questions just get directed that way.
Don't even. Yeah, I just had this affinity for it, to work in something to do with anything to do with science, anything, and that meant clinical. I don't know. I just felt I wanted to do it. I loved like watching how would you say it? Documentaries on medicine and doctors and. It's so nerdy, but it's true.
It's interesting and informative.
I had a really good interest in it, and nature as well, and science and biology and physics. You have the great David Attenborough. You have all of these people. They talk about nature and biology and science, and that really got me into it. And it's just feeding a satisfaction that you have for knowledge. And when it came to when you're asking me did I always want to do it? No, I thought I wanted to go to space. that was
that's every kid's dream. Yeah, it's still one of my dreams to go to space.
To go to space, right? Even though I hate flying.
You could walk to space.
Yeah, with some gravity boots is fine. I just knew I wanted to do something scientific, and that meant either medicine, dentistry. I didn't know what it meant because I wasn't that thoughtful about it back in the day. I didn't really think. I just did it because I enjoyed it. I did my A levels because I enjoyed it. I picked my A levels out. I said, okay, yeah, I want to do this, this, and this. And when asked, I was like, I don't know, because I like it, because I enjoy doing it. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have, people saying, oh yeah, I did this subject, because I wanted to go into this course. And that was at 17, 18. At 17, 18, I was picking my subjects and I was thinking, oh, I want to do this subject, I want to do this subject. And not for any other reason besides, I'm just good at it. I like it. And I want to see what it's like. That was me. That was like the simplest explanation I can give you. And then when it came to actually going on to uni, I was like, okay, now what do I do? Not knowing that I hold A levels that could get me into a lot of places, but I wouldn't know what to do with them. I didn't know what to do with them. So I needed some guidance there. And that's another thing. You should never ask. You should never feel ashamed to ask for guidance.
Definitely.
I had to really ask for guidance. And I did not know what I was doing, but alhamdulillah, like I wasn't aware of what my A levels could do for me, and I feel like if I did, I would have taken advantage of it in the wrong way. A lot of people might have.
So what did you study at A level?
So I studied maths, chemistry, and biology.
So really nerdy stuff.
Do not say that.
No. It takes a smart mind to do it. So, mashallah.
It wasn't easy, but it was more of the saying was consistency and not quantity. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It was the consistency that I was good at, not much of the quantity. If you ask me now, I won't be able to tell you anything from what I've learned back then. But it was the consistency of learning and retaining that information. But when I was at college, right, you're surrounded by people who are doing the same subjects.
Yeah.
You don't feel smart when you're with them. You feel like when you go home, they make you feel at home. They make you feel smart, right? Because you're like, oh my God, he's doing this, and this subject. This guy's like genius. I'm like, no, I'm not. When I'm at college and I see these students are 10 times more ahead of me, maybe because of whatever, just whatever circumstances, right? And this is another thing we could touch on: circumstantial effects on your education. We have experienced a lot of that, 100%, because some people get a higher advantage from a younger age, so they're more prone to being better at certain subjects than another student that might come from a less niche environment, and who's just jumped in this pool of madness and expected to swim out alive. Do you get me?
No, I understand.
And when it comes to the science, when it boils down to the sciences, they're listed as one of the hardest subjects to do for a reason, because it's very heavy. But the students who were with me, right, they were so, mashallah, they were smart, right, and they made me feel like I needed a challenge. So I kind of paired myself with them. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna stay here. I'm gonna try and get to that level. So
they were your bar, essentially.
Yeah, they were my bar. They set the bar, and I had to reach it. And I did my best to reach it. And alhamdulillah, I feel like I've reached it in my heart. So, of course, when it came to passing, so it was like one level to the next level to the next level. And another thing is, your A levels just don't define what you can do. Your A levels don't define what you can do. It's just a stepping stone, like GCSEs. Nobody talks about your GCSEs. Nobody talks about your A levels after university. They just say, have you got a degree? Yes. Okay, cool. Have you got work experience? Yes. Have you got a degree? Yes. They don't ask you about your A levels. The only people who care about your A levels is university when you're applying, and that's because you need to hit a certain grade boundary to then progress onto the next stage.
So was the grade boundary for pharmacy fairly high, or?
For me, I got lucky because I went through clearing.
Okay.
That was because I applied to so many courses. I did not know what to make my mind up.
Okay.
I got into optometry. I got into biomed at Liverpool. I got into chemistry at Loughborough. I got into optometry at Anglia Ruskin. I don't even know why I applied there. I just applied there.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, so applying to pharmacy was a last minute decision, but it was the best decision I made. And
We have a phone call into the studio.
right.
We'll take the call, inshallah.
Beautiful.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Walaikum salam.
How are you, sister? You okay?
Yes, alhamdulillah, I'm okay.
Can you just tell us your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Mobeen.
Sorry?
Mobeen.
Sorry, I still couldn't catch that.
Sorry, Mobeen.
Mobeen.
Okay. So, sister, what did you want to say to us today?
Sorry, what was that?
What did you want to speak to us about today?
Oh, right, and I was talking about pharmacy and education. I just wanted to sort of discuss about going into the
So,
profession.
sister, I spoke to your husband early on, and he was telling about your experience. If you can tell a bit about your experience, when did you start the pharmacy course and all of that?
Okay, so with myself, I was working in the field as a healthcare counter assistant and worked a little in dispensary. So I sort of had the ambition to go into pharmacy, and then after having my children, so I have alhamdulillah 3 children, and then I went into education as a mature student. So I won't give away my age, but I was in my early 30s. But it was a very challenging time, but very much rewarded, alhamdulillah, because it's a profession. It's such a the profession itself is so vast and so much regarding it. But the experience in terms of education, very stressful, very challenging. But it was all about sort of timekeeping and managing both, education as well as home life, as well as children's needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
Jazakallah so much, sister, for calling in and sharing your insightful experience with us.
On that note, definitely there have been a lot of mature students in my year, of course. I know some of my friends are fathers of 2 children, in the late 20s, early 30s as well. And I see the struggle 100%, and I try and help however I can help in the legal sense of good academic practice. But alhamdulillah, I see the efforts that they're making, and it's amazing. You look at it and we think that, how am I complaining about not having enough time? And I see like some of my colleagues who are working firstly, studying, and then also balancing family life as well with that, whilst commuting to work as well. So one of my friends commutes from Wolverhampton, and that's about a good hour and a half drive, and that's every day. So you think like how alhamdulillah, like the balance is difficult, but you find it somehow.
Definitely.
So sister, how are you finding at the moment, if I may ask?
Sorry, what was the question?
How are you finding the course, or have you finished?
Well, I'm currently still in education, so now I'm doing my prescribing course.
Yes.
But alhamdulillah, my children are a lot older. But when I was doing the course, as you mentioned, my peers were so much younger than me.
Yeah.
And a lot of the young adults, I'd call them, they kind of looked up to me in a sense of an older sister type of relationship.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely, like you mentioned, that you sometimes look at the mature students and think, how do they manage it? But you kind of have to tune yourself. And I think because you have no choice, similar to like how we tune ourselves in Ramadan, it's adapting a certain way of going forward because you have to. There's no other way around it.
Yeah.
So, for example, Easter holidays, that's a prime time to get your head down and revise. So what I would do is get up like 4 or 5 in the morning, say, right, from 5 till, I don't know, 2 o'clock. That's my dedicated study time.
Yeah.
After that, it's cut off and it is just family time.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of make those steps and put them in place so that you're able to fulfill both. It's very difficult, but it's, you're driven differently because you have to be, you have no choice. You have to fill every timetable gap and put yourself in that library. You know, you can't, I see the younger adults go into town and think, you know what, I'll go into town for a bit with my friends, or they would go into town. But I would go straight to the library, and so would my other mature students. So I had a few other mature student peers, and we'd kind of we'd come together and know that we'd have to study. We study differently, and quite often I found that because the younger adults would come to us and say, "Oh, what do you think about this?" Or do you know what I mean? Because they knew we were on it differently.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But no, absolutely. I mean, after that, I went into doing my diploma. After the diploma, I managed to get a job in GP practice. That came with an 18-month course, and now I'm doing my prescribing course. So yes, still in the books.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, that's a really, really inspiring story to hear. I'm sure our listeners listening today on Radio Ramadan 87.7 FM will take a lot of inspiration from your story and take note of what you said, inshallah.
And all the best with your prescriber's course. Alhamdulillah, that's one step I'm willing to take, and I would love to take in the next coming years as an aspiring pharmacist.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah, you know what? Pharmacy profession is so exciting. It's got so many avenues. I can remember from my experience of Boots, you know, it used to be behind the counter. It was very, you know, community-based. Now it's so widespread, so many opportunities, and it's an excellent career to go into. My daughter, mashallah, she's actually in her second year of pharmacy, and she's studying as well. And she's like my budding pharmacy, and we take a lot from each other. And it's very exciting. So anyone out there, absolutely, you're forever growing. Alhamdulillah, and it's very exciting. And all the best with your prescribing course as well.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah for calling, sister. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
barakatuh. That was amazing.
That was a really, really nice call. Yeah, I was not expecting a call today, so that was a nice surprise.
Alhamdulillah. It's good to know that people are listening.
Very good to know people are listening.
Definitely good to know that. So touching on the, I'd say the effects that pharmacy has on our Muslim community, because that's what it's all about, right? That's what we have to talk about, definitely. Yep. How do you benefit the Muslim community and the Muslim society? For anyone out there who has any, of course, helpful information, you know, please feel free to call on our number.
Definitely.
If you would read out the number, if you have it.
Brother Akil has the number somewhere.
Okay, that's fine.
You can call the studio on top what? Bottom one. 0116 482 2086. That's 0116 482 2086. You can call the studio if you have anything to add from what we've said today. Any sort of advice for other people out there.
How long have we got on the show?
We've got about 5 minutes, so we'll just summarize now what we discussed. So to finish off, what's a key piece of advice you would give to young Muslims who are currently, let's say, in college, looking to do pharmacy or any sort of medical field, and people in university who are currently studying pharmacy and maybe they might be struggling with working at the same time as studying, with an increased workload from college. They might not be managing the time properly, especially that Ramadan's here now as well. It's difficult to find time or the energy as well, especially to study. So what sort of advice would you have for them?
Well, my advice would be, firstly, stay close to the masjid. You will need it. Ask for du'as. You will need it. when it comes to revision and again, you need to discipline yourself and learn how to say no. You know, oh, we're going out or we're going here. No, sorry, I can't do that. I need to catch up. I need to meet my checklist for today.
Definitely.
Make a checklist, make a list. Small things to do every day. 1 topic, 2 topics every day. You try and overload yourself in 1 day or 2 days and with 3 or 4 different topics, you're not going to retain anything. It's going to be really difficult.
So you do bit by bit.
By bit, but understand what you're doing. And there's something called active recall, which is great. And which is like revisiting topics every week as a pop quiz or anything like that, as a revisit, and teaching as well. You know, if you've got brothers or sisters or friends, anything, teach them. You know, even if they're not listening to you, you're still talking to yourself. You're still processing that because it's in your brain somewhere. You know, it's in your subconscious somewhere. And I say subconscious, and it's like your hidden brain, and that comes out only through a repetitive learning. I'd also say what helps me is teaching people, definitely. I mind map a lot. I just write random little notes and stick it on my wall. So when I look at my wall, I just see all these notes, and it's just like active recall. So I'm reading out, oh yeah, that's that. You know, it's there on the sticky note.
Good bedtime story as well.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I'm just on my desk. I just write something, little note I make, put it on the wall, sticky note. Mind maps, you know, anything like that. YouTube as well, that helps. But again, for our Muslims out there, and you know who are listening as well, at university, at college, it's more setting your intentions, doing it for the sake of Allah, and Allah will open those doors for you. You know, if you do it, if you're doing things in vain, you're not giving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a reason for you to, you know, progress. He wants to see you progress in his, you know, to benefit people, to benefit his creation, to benefit him, to benefit yourself. I believe that's a good, strong motivational factor, and that will help you conquer all the obstacles that are coming. I 100%.
Okay, well, we are coming to the end of our show now. It was quite sad, you know. It was a good conversation. I was ready to go for another hour, maybe. However, I will be here for another 3 hours, inshallah, over the next 3 weeks. Every Wednesday, I will be coming in with new guests for you. Next week, we have 2 girls coming in who are studying radiography.
MashaAllah.
One of whom completed her hifz while studying, and the other wrote an article about radiography courses in Ramadan. So inshallah, we'll see them next week, and we're really looking forward to hearing about what they have to say about their experiences. Well, Adam, a pleasure as always having you in the studio.
It's always a pleasure.
Really informative. If anybody has any inquiries or wants to share their thoughts, please do contact the studio, and inshallah the studio will get in touch with me or Adam, and we can guide you in any sort of way that you need.